with broad bipartisan support amid campus arrests. The Anti-Semitism Awareness Act would require the Education Department to adopt the definition of anti-Semitism used by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Oh boy, wow. It passed with 320 to 91. 21 Republicans and 70 Democrats voted against the legislation. I'm actually surprised.
Me too.
To see as many Democrats vote against it. I'm not surprised by the Republicans, but the Democratic Party is pushing very heavily away from Israel. So I guess it's not really that surprising. They say the bill, titled the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, would mandate that the Education Department...
That's how crazy. This would hold up in court, Supreme Court. It won't get there for when. The path to... This is so serious. This got to go to the Supreme Court immediately. But it won't get there. They're almost there at the end of their session. What do they do after their session is over? Is that when they get the yacht time and the speaking tours? And I'm sorry to bother you. There's a job to do for the country. I'm sorry you're working so hard, justices. Maybe we should expand the Supreme Court so we have somebody working at all times. These niggas are part-time. The Civil Rights Act is the backbone for this madness. Along with, I'm not going to get into the 14th Amendment, that's a whole separate segment, along with wild interpretations of the 14th Amendment is problematic because it just gets wilder and wilder and wilder. But let's stick with the true backbone of this bill is the Civil Rights Act. They're doing it under Title VI. You can't rule this awareness of Anti-Sem Act, whatever it's called, but the real name of it right now is HR 6090. It's not in the Senate yet. The Senate usually changes the name. They'll do a write-up. I don't know if they're going to even do a write-up on this one. It's going to pass. There's no one who wants to dare challenge that authority. Even though Thomas Massie is a Zionist, in my book, he's the only one that really on the right challenges the authority, which I appreciate, even though he is part of the problem. If a business doesn't want to hire someone, this is where the heartfelt support for the Civil Rights Act came from. If a business doesn't want to hire someone because they're black, that's not what we want, is it? No, it's not what we want. But if a business doesn't want to hire me because I have brown skin, let me just do brown skin because I think we can, I don't know what black is. I can tell you I have brown skin, dark brown skin. Their terms are acceptable. If they don't want to hire me, I'm good with that. I'll go find something to do. I'll live off grid. I don't need you. The government is not God. You cannot legislate somebody's preference. You don't think people choose, oh, that's a whitey. Oh, that's a blackie. That's a this. That's a that. I'm not going to hire them, or I don't want to service them, but I'll think of another way to get around it. We already have protection from the government. That's where you really need protection written down. But again, it's hard to know. But what I mean is you don't want the government to say, I want to tax whitey more than blackie. This is different than a private. This bill, this anti-Sem bill is targeting private organizations. It includes private organizations. And what I'm separating is I do agree that if we have a government like we have, it can't discriminate. So the Civil Rights Act is not for that. We already have that in the 14th Amendment, but you need a narrow constitutionalist interpretation of that. The 14th Amendment basically says states can't discriminate against people. We don't need a Civil Rights Act for the private sector or who gets public money. We can't have a Civil Rights Act. If a society gives the government that much power, like we did with the Civil Rights Act, it will always end in the government using it to consider everyone except their political enemies as a protected class. Our society is built on trust. What that means is we are on an honor system. That means if you pick a DA for your county, you are on an honor system that DA will faithfully uphold the Constitution of the United States and will fairly prosecute the laws that the state passes. But now we know that's not true. Alvin Bragg said way before this Trump stuff came, right after he won, basically said, I'm not prosecuting certain things. The law is on the book, but I don't have to prosecute it. If we're in a country, we have to be in agreement that there's not selective prosecution. So if Hillary C does a fake dossier, that's fraud. But then if there's business falsification records on a former president, we're not going to go hard on that, consider it a felony, call it fraud, do the media hit pieces, and then ignore the other fraud. We're under the understanding that we can't legislate kind of morality. So the country has fractured. People are using loopholes, and that's what this is. The Civil Rights Act, Title VI, prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, or national origin in programs and activities that receive federal financial assistance. If the government doesn't like what's happening with a private company, let's just look at private companies, because that's where the fascism really comes in. With private companies, it can reward all other companies that bend the knee. That is fascism. So if I criticize that country over there, then the government can say my criticism is labeled as this and I don't get federal funds, but my competition does get federal funds. It's the exact same thing that they do with social media. Elon Musk has monetized X, and there's an account on there with a guy I like a lot, Dom Luker. I believe that's how you pronounce it, Dom Luker. Dom Luker got demonetized. Why? He didn't break any laws? Because Elon Musk and the WPAUSE-EF that runs the account through the CEO, Linda Yak, they said he should be demonetized arbitrarily. No law, no legal, none of that. They just said he needs to be demonetized. So what does that do? Now, Elon Musk can monetize Dom Luker's competition. So now he's losing opportunity costs for what? Not playing along. So Dom Luker plays along. He's been on his knees, slurping Elon Musk, slurping the banana like that Alex Stein skit, and he's remonetized now. That's the power. And you translate that to the federal government, that is literally my definition. I'm not some historical expert. That's what I call fascism. When the government can choose, oh, you're playing along, you get federal funds. Ding, ding, ding. Your campus put the knee on the back of those protesters, those anti-Sem protesters. Here you go. Your campus allowed them to build tents. Come here. You lose the federal funding. And then what's next after that? Now you're in the bad graces of the government. It uses the existing legal framework of the Civil Rights Act to address and enforce provisions against this term, whatever the hell it means. And if this bill passes, which it will be recognized as a form of discrimination under that title. So if you look at Katzenbach versus McClung, 1964, which I just did a cursory look at, it's going to allow this. That case, I'll do a different. I don't want to go too long. I was looking at Supreme Court cases. If you uphold that case, then this case will also be upheld. And what it also does is it allows an end around. I'll end with this. The Civil Rights Act now allows, look at this. This is crazy. Because I never realized this until I started digging into it last night. You can't put Biden supporters as a protected class under the Civil Rights Act because that's a political affiliation. You can't openly attack populists, MAGA, under the Civil Rights Act because that's a political affiliation. But what you could do, if you had the political power, is you could protect weather change advocates underneath the act. You absolutely could. You could protect pro-choice advocates under the act. The wording would be tricky, but there's nothing stopping them. If you can do this, there's nothing, you can put anything in there to protect. So you can't put Biden supporters, you can't put Democrat Party shills in there. But you can put anything in there, and that's where we're trending to. That's where how did the LGBTQ get in there? That's all that is. You can put everything they support in the bill as a protected class. And the brilliance of these protests, whoever's funding it, could be George S., who knows, is that they have now gotten people on the dissident, on the MAGA, on the right-wing conservative, which just means Zionism. They've gotten them to support the downfall of America because they don't have the courage to admit that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is absolute trash.
Middle MAGA.